Mangwanani Mwalelepo Fukenjani, Kleklaswana Africa. Welcome to Africa. Good morning. The news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joining us on Wednesday, the 25th of February. We're going to be joined by Rorisang Mogojwe as she delivers the Botswana report from Gaborone. But these are some of the top stories we'll be looking at prior to that. Ramaphosa expresses gratitude to Vladimir Putin as 17 South Africans secured from Russia-Ukraine conflict. Over 600 Kenyans seek court intervention after alleged trafficking ordeal in Cambodia. M23 spokesperson Willy Ngoma killed in Congo Army drone strike. World Bank commits $6 billion support package for Mozambique over 5 years. Those are just some of our top stories. We also have updates with regards to the Kazungula Bridge collaboration between Zambia and Botswana, amongst other potent headlines. DSTV285 GOTV 25 oneup2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA is where you can always watch Africa. Good morning. Top stories shortly. Let's get into our top stories as we start with South Africa-Russia relations. President Cyril Ramaphosa has thanked President Vladimir Putin of Russia for the return of 17 South Africans who were allegedly misled into joining the Russia-Ukraine war. The group contacted the South African government last November with distress calls after traveling to Russia, believing they would receive bodyguard training, only to find themselves deployed to the front line in Ukraine. Ramaphosa's office confirmed that 4 men returned last Friday. 11 are expected home soon, and 2 will follow later, while investigations into their recruitment continue. Vincent Magwenya said 2 remain in Russia, 1 hospitalized in Moscow and another finalizing travel arrangements. Duduzile Zuma-Sambudla, daughter of former President Jacob Zuma, has been named as the alleged recruiter, which she denies. 5 others were arrested in December in a separate recruitment case. Now we're talking about recruitment overseas. There seems to be quite the issue because over 600 Kenyans stranded in Cambodia have petitioned the High Court in Nairobi, urging judges to compel the government to facilitate their return, following what they describe as a human trafficking ordeal disguised as overseas employment. According to court filings, they traveled to Southeast Asia after promises of legitimate jobs, but were confined in a guarded compound surrounded by high walls and barbed wire. Movement was restricted, and petitioners allege they worked up to 16 hours daily under strict targets, with some reporting physical abuse and untreated injuries, including stab wounds. After Cambodian security forces raided the site, those operating it fled, leaving the Kenyans behind without sufficient food, medical care, or funds to leave. They now seek urgent consular assistance and evacuation before a February 28 deadline. Here is their lawyer speaking on their behalf.
Well, we received very disturbing instructions from more than 600 Kenyans. It started by some funny adverts being put on some funny links that there are jobs in Cambodia, Thailand, and other countries. Many Kenyans applied, and our application they were told that the application was successful. They were required to get a visa, and a visa was processed in less than 5 hours. They were to get air ticket, and they were allowed out of this country without a return ticket. This is a serious question to the government of Kenya. Where can anybody be allowed to live with an airline unless you are moving to a country which is yours? These Kenyans who are left to leave this country with only one-way ticket. A serious question. Even students who go to study out of the country, they must produce a return ticket. Number two, after these people left here, they had been given a visa, a work permit visa. When they reached, they were given a tourist visa. When they reached in Cambodia, they were given a work permit. Some of these people, the story they are telling us is harrowing. A young lady has told us how when she failed to meet her targets, she was taken into a dark room and some Chinese men tried to rape her. A serious attack. The girl fought. She survived, but she was unconscious. She was carried and dumped in a forest to die. She survived. Some of the people who we have had their experiences that they were taken into a serious black hole where they are working for the business of scamming. That is the business that they were taken to do in Cambodia. When they do not meet the targets, these guys are given some bouncers, Egyptian bouncers and Pakistani bouncers, who are heavy and who have electrical shock machines.
As we move on to the DRC, Willy Ngoma, spokesperson for the M23 rebel group, was killed in a drone strike near Rubaya in North Kivu, Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, according to senior rebel officials, a regional diplomat and a Western advisor. The strike occurred around 3 a.m. near the strategic coltan mining hub that produces about 15% of global supply. Civil society sources reported heavy fighting in nearby areas, displacing hundreds of families. The incident comes amid Qatar-mediated ceasefire efforts, with Kinshasa and M23 signing agreements in Doha to establish a monitoring mechanism involving Qatar, the United States, and the African Union. Ngoma had been under European Union sanctions since December 2022. The Congolese presidency declined comment as fighting persists. Now, the image you had seen previously, just before Ngoma there, is Mr. Kwasi Kotoka from Ghana, and this is the story regarding the former general. Ghana's government has removed the name of Emmanuel Kwasi Kotoka from the country's main airport, restoring it to Accra International Airport on the 60th anniversary of the 1966 coup that overthrew Kwame Nkrumah. Kotoka was among the officers who deposed Nkrumah while he was visiting Asia and was later killed during a failed counter-coup. The airport had been renamed in his honor in 1969. Transport Minister Joseph Bukari Nikbe said the decision aimed to project a neutral national image reflecting the capital's name. Critics, including Kotoka's family and minority leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin, opposed the change, citing legacy concerns. Authorities assured the public that operations and safety standards remain unaffected amid ongoing public debate. Very interesting to watch how much restorative, quote-unquote, justice is going on in Africa as we speak. Those have been our top stories on Africa. Good morning. After the break, Rorisang Mogojwe talks to us about the Botswana government investing 1 billion pula just to keep the diamonds alive. Let's have a look at the weather first. All right, it's time for Rorisang Mogojwe to join us from Gaborone, Botswana, delivering the Botswana report. Dumela, Rorisang.
Good morning, Dumelang, and thank you so much for having me on Africa. Good morning.
All right, so the Botswana government seems to be fighting back to keep the diamond industry alive with a 1 billion pula investment plan.
Yes, Ashwin, that is correct. The government of Botswana has poured over 1 billion pula in investment into a global marketing campaign in order to protect and promote Botswana's natural diamonds as competition from lab-grown stones intensifies. When she was speaking in Parliament, the Minister of Minerals and Energy, Boholo said this high-stakes marketing global campaign or drive is designed to safeguard the country's most critical revenue source by educating international consumers about the rarity and the authenticity as well as the long-term value of natural diamonds. Now, she did note that the campaign is being rolled out in collaboration or in partnership with fellow diamond producing nations, including Angola, and it is a coordinated effort to strengthen the global positioning of natural stones against synthetic alternatives. The minister also said early indicators show that this strategy is actually gaining traction and diamond sales are actually beginning to recover, which is a development seen as critical for Botswana's ailing economic stability.
But I wanted to highlight that for 10 years, there was no category marketing in diamonds. For 10 years. And we started and we resuscitated marketing for diamonds last year. We injected $100 million into marketing and consumer education, making sure we are clear about the differentiation between natural diamonds and the differentiation with synthetics, making sure that there is last mile 18 inches disclosures that are needed to inform the consumer of what they are buying, telling the diamond story in different aspects, ensuring that we center impact at the heart of the value of diamonds, and we tell the Botswana story. Provenance was important. We invested in traceability and ensuring that those that sell the diamonds can tell the Botswana story.
Now, in some rather jarring news, Rorisang, Botswana's parliament has failed to reach a quorum again, and of course this means that the finance bill has been stalled.
The failure by the parliament to form a quorum and ultimately forcing the suspension of proceedings, which was the second time in recent weeks, is becoming what many see as a troubling trend and a culture of absenteeism within the National Assembly. Now, we understand yesterday that the sitting fell short by at least 7 members of parliament and ultimately halted a bill that had been tabled by the Minister of Finance, which sought to amend legislation authorizing withdrawals from the consolidated and the development funds for the financial ending 31st of March 2027, which is actually a key measure that will underpin government expenditure. Now, the Deputy Speaker did announce the suspension shortly after the session began, and she ruled out further debate on the matter, ultimately suspending the debate or the business of the day. And this was the second time in recent weeks. And so there has been strong criticisms from members of the public, critics, as well as stakeholders about the culture, the growing culture of absenteeism in the National Assembly. And so members of parliament are being called on to actually do their job and sit in parliament and debate these issues of national interest, bread and butter issues that affect the normal or the average Botswana members of the public. And this repeated collapse of proceedings has actually raised fresh concerns about discipline and accountability within the National Assembly.
Now, Rorisang, it seems the creatives are not quite happy as they have slammed the current government payment framework.
Well, despite receiving criticism from artists and creative industry players, the Minister of Sport and Arts, Jacob Gillibain, defended this framework, saying that the guidelines for the procurement of arts and culture products and services has been in place since 2018 and was developed under a presidential directive of 2015 under the previous regime. Now, he did note that fee structures were actually revised upwards after the COVID-19 pandemic in order to support recovery of the industry. Currently, minimum fees, we do know that they were increased from 10,000 Bula to 25,000 Bula for performance groups, including song and dance. And now current minimum rates stand at 25,000 Bula for performance groups and live bands, and 10,000 Bula for DJs or one-man bands, as well as 5,000 Bula for poets and traditional instrumentalists and MCs or program directors. The minister did stress that these are just baseline figures meant to guide procuring entities, and that artists may actually negotiate higher payments depending on the event scale and the budget that is in place. However, artists and creative industry players have continued to criticize the government, complaining that the government continues to fail to support the industry and the growth of the industry, which is currently moving at a snail's pace. And they are now calling for for these payment structures to be revised in order to support the creative industry in the country.
Mr. Speaker, it is worth noting that after the COVID-19 pandemic, the fees paid for groups such as traditional song and dance, chorale, and the choir were revised from 10,000 to 25,000 Pula. May the current structure ka senkating ile yone minimum fees tse reng di duelwe badiragatsi tse e leng gore governmente o di beile hapele. Ha o le MC, director of ceremony, 5,000. The group jaaka ke tlhalositse 25,000. Baboki mogolokwane, traditional instrument player, 5,000. Disc jockey kana bone bo DJ, 10,000. Contemporary live band, 25,000. Contemporary backtrack band, 10,000. One-person band, 10,000. Mr. Speaker, the ministry also intends during the NDP 12 to table the Performer Protection Bill before this Honorable House to strengthen the legal framework safeguarding the rights and welfare of performers. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Actually, only two. All right. We're going to get into just two of our economic news stories, and thank you, Rorisang, for delivering that report. We do have to make sure that we are quite particular with time. So getting into the first of the economic news stories, the World Bank announced plans to provide Mozambique with $6 billion in mostly concessional financing over 5 years to support public investment projects as the country faces strained public finances and IMF warnings on debt. Phyllis Sissoko said about $3 billion would come from the bank's balance sheet, with another $3 billion mobilized primarily as grants. An additional $4 billion in private sector funding is being targeted, keeping in mind that Mozambique's proposals to the IMF had been rejected just earlier in the week. So here comes the World Bank to the rescue. And in the last of our stories, Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema and Botswana's President Duma Boko jointly launched the commissioned the Kazungula Bridge Authority in Kasane, marking a milestone in bilateral relations and regional integration. The authority will manage operations, maintenance and development of the bridge spanning the Zambezi River, replacing the former ferry system and improving movement along the north-south corridor. Leaders emphasized infrastructure upgrades for seamless continental trade and African-led growth. We're going to leave you with economic indicators as we say goodbye on DSTV285 GOTV 25 Network Media Hub and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. We know that tomorrow Namibia will be tabling its budget, but today South Africa will be tabling its budget, and we know that Ari Hogard will join us tomorrow to break it all down after Enoch Godongwana's speech. This has been Africa Good Morning. We'll see you tomorrow. Sola Zwakanaka.